Now, with that said and done, let's go right into the Word. I know we just got a few minutes. I've got about 8 minutes to share a 40-minute message. Let's see what we can do here. So with no further delay, talking about Father's Day, and I wanted to say Happy Father's Day to everyone, especially to the fathers, And again, I'm so delighted I have my children with me today. I want to say kids, but they're not kids. They're grown-ups. They're adults. It's hard to see that sometimes, but they really are incredible men and women of God right here, these three young people. They love God. They're so faithful. I've been very, very blessed. So a group of women got together, and they come up with about 34 different things, qualities that they consider that should be on a man card. And every one of you guys, every one of you gentlemen, did you get your man card? Okay. You got your man card? So if you don't, talk to one of the, right here in the very back, we got a gentleman that has those. But anyway, I just want to mention real quick 10 of them that women have just, said that ought to be on a man card. Number one, that you can grow a really great beard. I struck out on that one. It just doesn't happen. I've been trying to grow a beard since I was 15 years old, and it hadn't worked. Still doesn't work. Anyway, I missed out on number two. Women said if you want to be on your man card, you need to have incredible grill skills. Skills at the grill, yes. A man should own quality tools. Anybody relate? Yeah, any guys? And I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I'm in Arkansas, so I want to take the liberty. Men ought to understand a little bit about weapons. Hey, I grew up hunting all my life. I was 5 years old. I was carrying a single shot 22 going squirrel hunting with my dad. I learned how to shoot a gun when I was a kid and understood a lot about it. Number four. That was number four. Number five, you need to be able to work on cars. A man should be able to take apart a motor and put it back together and then it run. Yes. If you're a man, you have no fear of dirt or sweat. If you're a man, you can drive a stick shift. A man, you can give a solid handshake. Yeah. If you're a man, you believe that bacon is its own food group. How many relate to that one? Amen. I'm right there. And then number 10, you have a man cave filled with man things. Now, are you aware, gentlemen, God has a man card for us. A man card that contains 5 qualities, key qualities. Men, got your man card? Hold them up. Got your man card? Yeah. Look at your card there. There's a verse on that back of that card. And I want us to read this verse. And it's up here. It says, be watchful, stand firm in the faith. Act like men, be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. That's 1 Corinthians 16, verses 13 and 14. That's out of the English Standard Version. But and there's a reason because of that, because it really works, what I want to say today. Because if you look at the other side, there's the 5 qualities. It says, number 1, wake up. Number 2, stand up. Number 3, man up. Number 4, grow up. And number 5, love up. So very quickly, number 1, the first admonition is be watchful. Be watchful. Now, you got to understand, this is being used as a military term. This is what the idea is. Military guards, the MPs, they're on patrol. No sleeping on the job. You got to be alert. You got to have your eyes open. You got to know what's happening around you. Be aware of your surroundings. So it literally means to watch, to be alert, to be vigilant. In other words, we're supposed to be looking out for danger and the attacks of the enemy. And we need to be aware of what's happening in our world today. Our world, our society, there is a all-out assault on our culture and upon our values. The politicians, the celebrities, the musicians, the sports figures, they're all assaulting the values, especially godly, biblically based values, what God has declared. There's an assault on that. And they're trying to rob our young people and create confusion and cause destruction and dismay. And we as men of God, we have to be aware of what's happening, aware of what's going on in my own life, number 1, but aware of what's happening in my family. what's happening in my life spiritually, what's happening in my family, what's happening in my wife's life, what's happening in my children's lives. We have a big responsibility, and we have to be on guard. It's time to wake up. In other words, when he says watch, he says be watchful. He's saying it's the opposite of being spiritually asleep, spiritually passive, spiritually careless, or easily deceived. David, there was a point when David was on the run from King Saul. And for several years, he was hiding in different places. And he came to a location called Ziph. And his location was betrayed to Saul. And so Saul immediately travels to Ziph, where David is with his army, and with the intent of capturing David and possibly killing David. And that night, Saul enters into a cave, and Saul's men, they sleep in a circle around King Saul. King Saul is in the middle of the circle with his armor bearer and with his commander, his general of his army, Abner. And they're sleeping there, and all the other soldiers are sleeping around them. And David, he sneaks up, and him and Abishai, who's David's right-hand man, they sneak up into the camp, and they go up to Saul. And they literally, Abishai saying, this is God. He's telling you he's giving Saul in your hand, kill him. And so David says, I will not touch God's anointed. What he does cut part of his garment off, but he said his spear and a water jug was there. And he takes the spear and the water jug, and then David leaves the camp, and he goes over to another mountain. And then he cries out. And he cries out, and he wakes up Abner, who was supposed to be taking care of King Saul. And listen to what David says in 1 Samuel 26. He says, and David said to Abner, are you not a man who is like you in Israel? Then why have you not kept watch over your Lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy the king your Lord. This thing that you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you deserve to die because you have not kept watch. Wow. Over your Lord, over the Lord's anointed. And he says, look, here's the spear and here's the water jug that was beside the king's head. Wow, it was an indictment against Abner because he had become careless. It's a warning for us that we be not passive, that we be not careless, but we be alert and watchful. The word says, the Bible says in Matthew 24:42, Jesus said, stay awake, therefore, for you do not know what day your Lord is coming. In 1 Peter 5:8, Peter says, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around seeking whom he may devour. And then Revelation 2:2, Jesus says, wake up and strengthen what remains. Fathers, today, men, let us rise up to the occasion. Let us be moved, stirred in our hearts, and let us be alert. It's not time to be sleepy soldiers. It's time to be watchful warriors. It's time to wake up. Warrior of God. Number 2, he said, stand up. The second exhortation that Paul gives here in 1 Corinthians 16, he says, stand firm in the faith. Stand firm in the faith. In other words, stand up under. Or be steady and constant in your convictions. Now, again, I want you to relate this with military. The first one is you got to be alert, on guard, aware of your surroundings. Number 2, he says, stand firm. And we're called to be warriors. Remember, we're called to be warriors. And so the military emphasis here would relate to a broad stance. You stand with your feet spread apart in a posture ready to engage in battle, ready to fight, where you're not easily knocked off balance. We're taught, I remember when we were playing basketball in high school, we were taught, the coach would say, bend your knees, spread your legs, bend your knees, hands down, and then, you got to move. You got to move. You got to defend that player. When you're on the football field, spread those legs, bend down, get those feet in there, plant your feet in order to take out, tackle whomever. We got to be ready to fight, firm in our stance, because we are in a warfare. We're in a spiritual war. And let me tell you, the devil doesn't play nice. He will trip you up any way he can. And so we've got to keep our posture, be ready for battle. You don't sit down, you don't lay down. We're fighting. And the picture applied here to our lives is that we got to stand firm when the winds of adversity come, when false doctrines blow on us. We're standing facing the enemy more than just being on guard. No. We anticipate the battle. As Peter noted, he says, he says, be sober-minded, watchful. Your adversary, he's looking, he's seeking whom he may devour. Paul, he's saying, he's encouraging the church, don't waver, don't be uncertain, don't be doubtful. Which is illustrated by lack of faith. He wanted them to grow deep roots so they'd be able to stand in the fight. So if we go back one chapter, 1 Corinthians 15:58, he says, therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. In Philippians 4:1, Paul tells the Philippian church, therefore, my brothers, whom I love and long for, my joy and crown, stand firm. In Ephesians chapter 6, he says, put on the whole armor of God, and having done all to stand, stand therefore, stand firm. Be ready for battle. Men, it's imperative. We've got to stand up. God is looking for people that are willing to stand up and not cower down. Bold in the faith. Number 3, and we got man up. I like this one, man up. That's a phrase we use a lot among men. Hey, man up, cowboy up. Yeah, man up. Well, Paul told them the same thing here in Corinthians. He says, act like men. Now some of the other versions, I think it's King James says be brave or be courageous. I think NIV says be brave. And that's fine. In Spanish, you wonder why I didn't open my Bible. It's in Spanish. This is the only Bible I carry, a Spanish Bible, all the time, 24/7. But in Spanish it says, behave manly. That's what it says in the Spanish. Behave manly. Man up. Be strong, be courageous, be brave, yes. But act like a man. In other words, our masculinity is under assault nowadays. And this is a present tense, and it literally means constantly show yourselves as men. This is the idea of being a man, not a boy, a child. In other words, acting like an adult, being responsible, not acting childish. 1 Corinthians 14:20 says, brothers, do not be children in your thinking, be infants in your evil, but in your thinking be mature. Wow. In 1 Samuel 4:9, this is the enemy. This is the Philistines. This is what the Philistines were telling each other. They were saying, take courage. They were saying, be strong and conduct yourselves like men. Conduct yourselves like men and fight. This is what the Philistines were selling each other because they knew what Israel was capable of, because they knew Israel served the only true, almighty, omnipotent God of the universe. The enemy knows what they need. How come we don't? It's time to man up. In an article called The Modern Man and His Fantasy World, the author writes this, and I'm quoting. He says, I have noticed a trait among men where faith is impeded. I'm talking about a cultural fixation upon fantasy. Men are giving themselves to something they can see, but it's not real. However, with Christianity, we give ourselves to something that we cannot see, but is actually very real. We find that men are reluctant and stagnant in their Christianity because they are thriving in a fantasy world of video games, pornography, fantasy sports. Is it any wonder why there's such a decline in biblical masculinity in the church? It is a shame that many men are far too busy conquering fake lands, looking at fake women, and winning fake championships instead of following Christ's path for self-denying, cross-bearing service. Ouch. Wow. Oh, man. Guys, the faith world is much, much more real than the fantasy world. You're not too young and you're not too old to man up. Daniel was a teenager when he was ripped out of his city of Jerusalem, taken captive to Babylonia. And he lived out as a young man. He lived out his convictions and his courage living in pagan Babylon. And yet on the other end of that spectrum, we see Caleb, who was 85 years old. In Joshua 14:12, he's telling Joshua, give me this mountain. Caleb says, I understand there's giants on that mountain. I understand there's opposition on that mountain. But I have a promise from God. And God has given me that mountain. And I will possess that promise. A man of conviction, no matter what age. King David had some mighty men who were known as the 30 chiefs. Abishai, their leader, he killed 300 men with a spear. Benaiah, he went into a pit. He went down into a pit on a snowy day and he killed a lion. But he also served as the leader of David's bodyguards. Fellow mighty men of God, it's time for us to stand up and man up. Hallelujah, and be what God has called us to be.